Morning, morning, monsters. Good to see you all. So, the setup's going to be a little bit different today because we're doing something different for the next week or so. We're going to be talking about VR design, and we're going to be going through a bunch of PSVR games. We're going to be talking about what makes them good, what makes them less good, things you can learn from them, all in preparation for the new Dreams VR patch, which I'm super excited for. Pix, that cable's not for you. Cats and cables. There's going to be a bunch of technical malarkey because obviously doing VR streams is a little bit of a thing. If you're streaming, by the way, from the PlayStation, it's dead easy. The negatives from streaming from the PlayStation is chat management becomes a little bit tricky. Normally I have a secondary setup for chat when I'm in VR, which, as I say, I'll talk about in the future. But today, because we're doing Beat Saber, and Beat Saber is all about music and me hearing it as much as feeling it and seeing it, we're going to have to do a direct headphone hookup thingamajiggy, and I can't do the patch in with the second earphones because it's one of the few games where you actually do have to stand up. Right. Thank you. Yes, I all of a sudden feel great again because hairdressers are open, and normally my hair's all coloured, but quarantine has been fun. Right, so Beat Saber. First thing about Beat Saber, as I say, it's a stand-up game. Now, a lot of people will vigilantly defend stand-up over sitting. However, you will find a lot of players do want to sit. And you can play Beat Saber sitting down, it's just not as great an experience. That being said, the visceral nature of Beat Saber standing up really helps it. So I think that's the first thing I should talk about with VR games. I mean, it's a thing of game design in general, but one of the things we've learned about game design, and it's one of the reasons why AAA games will occasionally make you button mash and do things like that, is sharp gestures, particularly sharp active gestures, like those, like yank and all that, have a very positive effect on. You can pick me up on the mic. Great. You're going to see a bit of a cut-off head here, I'm afraid. I haven't got much room in the study. They have a very positive effect on your endorphin levels and your feelings when you're playing a game. So I suppose that's the first big takeaway from Beat Saber, is by making the player do a little bit of exercise, they're gonna feel better about the game. They're gonna feel more amped and pumped. I think the best case I ever saw this used was in a card game. It was called BAM or SPAM, or I don't know, it was called BAM Spaceships or something. Anyway, what they were doing is basically, in the rules of the card game, whenever you put down an attack card, you had to make the pow, bam, whiz, pop, whatever the sound was. Oh dear, I've got these wrong. Normally, people look at these wrist guards and they go, is it really necessary? And I actually say for Beat Saber it really is, not only because televisions are expensive, but also because if these cables dangle, I feel really, they put me off. They really put me off. But what I was saying about the bang, pam thing, when you vocalize or when you make sharp gestures with your body, your brain just engages more with things, which is why if an activity can get you to go whiz, pop, whatever, it's going to engage people more. So exercise games have that as an advantage. And I started with Beat Saber because I know a lot of you will initially want to copy Beat Saber. So let's just start off with just one of the classic Beat Saber songs. Let me know how that mixes. I think I might have the game mix turned up a smidge too high. Looking forward to some Crab Rave. Stronger. I'm going to start off with one of the classic songs because I know them better. And then we'll do some of the new 90 Degrees stuff because I want to talk about that. Let's start off with Beat Saber. Right. So, I'm going to be a bit in the zone for a second, and then we're going to talk about what makes Beat Saber different to other games. But the first thing is it really gets you in flow state, and if you talk too much, you break out of flow state. So apologies, that's going to happen a bit today, where I might go quiet. Sorry, that actually physically disgusted me. I'm going to have to go quiet for a second, actually do this properly. Man, okay, sorry. It's been a while since I played Beat Saber because it's been a setup in the study that has made VR harder lately. Getting tilted. Okay, first of all, let's not get tilted. Let's go through a song and then we're going to talk about the design of the song and the game itself. No, that is wrong. Why am I sorry? I'm getting really tilted. I think it's because I'm streaming and playing Beat Saber at the same time, which is not something I normally do. I'm just gonna have to go for.
We're playing Beat Saber.
Okay.
We're playing. Yeah, I got the power.
Feel it.
I got the power. I got unlimited power. I got the power. I got unlimited power. I got the power. I got unlimited power. Running the game. We are not playing the same. I was just going insane. From red to blue, from blue to red, the record from red from overhead. We're playing. Coming closer, victory is mine. I'm making history, it's time. I'm living this moment, living the only, giving up only when my score is higher. You cannot find no one better than me. You cannot cover my delicacy. You cannot follow my legacy, please. Cause I'm a phenomenon and carrying on. Cause I can go on. And anything else you can say for later. We're playing Beat Saber.
Okay, abysmal. During the stream we may have to drop down to a lower difficulty because playing Beat Saber while talking to you all is a little bit tougher. The game is super loud. Okay, let's smidge the game down a bit. There we go. So let's start off with the obvious stuff. Beat Saber is one of the best-selling VR games of all time. There is a reason for that. We'll go through why. They're now owned by Facebook, but they're on every platform, and that's part of the reason. But a big part of the reason was they were an early mover, and they do a lot of solid design principles in VR. So let's talk about some of those design principles as we go through them. I'm going to drop down to an easier difficulty. I've dropped down the audio level of the game, and while we're in a chiller difficulty, we'll start to talk about what makes Beat Saber a little bit different. As I say, it has the advantage. One second. it has the advantage. I'm going to go on to normal on run and actually I'll go on hard. I've never gone normal on run and bass. It has the advantage of being an early title, but the bigger thing is it's a simple title. Right. So rendering is not hard, and that means that on most VR platforms it hits the highest frame rate possible on the platform. And that makes a huge difference. People all talk about 60 frames being acceptable with asynchronous time rate and various hardware hackery, but realistically, if you can hit 120 FPS, or if you can hit the higher frame rate, it really does make a significant quality difference in the VR experience, specifically to nausea and comfort. More than anything, getting the frame rate up is a big deal. So the simplistic graphics do not actually throw people. In fact, they really would focus people on the other situation. I think that's another big lesson people can take from Beat Saber. You don't have to go crazy over the top with the visuals. But there's enough sort of visual noise in the background to give you the feeling of being in a space. Now, the very first lesson you should learn about actual game design in VR is when people enter VR, especially gamers, they enter with a false set of expectation that they're a lot better than they actually are, especially when it comes to physical movement. Gamers kind of, I think everyone kind of overestimates this, but in VR it's particularly bad because if you scream back to real life or municipal, there's nothing to blame. You can't blame broken physics in the real world. You can't blame anything else. You know, sometimes people say there's sun in my eye. But in VR, people do blame the game. They do blame bad tracking, even when you can prove the tracking in that particular case is really solid. So the first thing you need to do by default is give the player a lot of help. Now you'll notice when I'm swiping through these blocks in Beat Saber, there's a score that's given. And the score is partly my speed through the block, partly my accuracy through the block. And you'll notice that a lot of times I'm scoring below 100. Now what people don't realise is on pretty much all the difficulty nodes of Beat Saber, except Big Expert Plus, they don't do it. There is a much bigger collision box around the visible box that you see. The collision box isn't a cube, it's more sort of a elongated, pyramid, cuboid. Hard to describe the shape. But anyway, it's wider and fatter, closer towards you, and about the same size of the block as you go towards it. And then there's a much smaller bad hit collision box. That means if I'm hitting the block with the correct Beat Saber in the correct direction, it uses the good hit detection block to see if I did hit it. Gives me a score based on that. But in terms of accidental mishits, it doesn't actually trigger unless... Am I on my account? I am on my account. I thought I had all the trophies for... Okay, whatever. I'm not going to think about it now. Music packs. Let's go for some... No, actually, no. That'll get me in trouble with... Let's stick to the originals. Yeah, okay. So anyway... That collision box is the first trick that Beat Saber has up its sleeve, and it makes people feel a lot cooler than they actually are. The other thing that made Beat Saber very successful is there's been a lot of rhythm games in the future. The advantage that Beat Saber has is not pure rhythm game. I don't have to hit these things on the beats. In fact, my score isn't affected at all by how close to the beats I hit these things on. I can stretch forward, I can stretch back. And so my window to hit these is a lot more wide in terms of time. So the game is a lot more forgiving than a lot of other rhythm games of its nature. And that really helps it. And when I'm in trouble I can recover because I can stretch forward to hit things sooner and I can stretch back to hit things later. And so unlike a sort of traditional push buttons when stuff is in the zone rhythm game, there's more leeway for me as a player to work with, and that's at the core of Beat Saber. It's trying to make me feel as course, the other secret weapon we're not talking about, and we haven't talked about it soon, is music. Music and audio design is powerful, but I think everyone knows that even outside of VR, that it's super powerful. The advantage in VR is specialized audio is so much better, and generally speaking, especially if someone is on the Gen 2, it's really amazing tracks that people designed. I particularly like some of the non-audio ones, non-musical ones, like playing Beat Saber to Shrek. Right, let's go through. Is the game still too loud? Sorry about that. I'll knock the game back further. Did you all catch that, or was the game just too loud? Please let me know, because I can repeat it. Right. Still too loud, okay. Yeah, we missed most of what I'm saying. Okay. Well, I will quickly summarize. I'll turn the music way down. Sorry, it's really hard to get a judge because my headphones are normally plugged into my my mixer setup, so I can normally hear the balance. Okay. The low visual quality lets them hit frame rate. Frame rate is the biggest comfort effector on VR, right? So if you can make your game run faster, always do that. Trade visuals for performance, always. It's just one of those things. For pure comfort, it's a big factor. The collision blocks, there's a good hitbox and a bad hitbox. The good hitbox is significantly bigger than the visual. The bad hitbox is slightly smaller. I believe that's in every difficulty except Expert Plus. The hitbox also stretches forward in front of the block, and it goes slightly wider. So that's a big factor as well. The fact that the game makes you move and exercise is a huge factor to making people enjoy the game. It's the physical exertion part of the game has a bigger effect than I think a lot of people realize. Obviously, music and track design help a lot. Music will get you into the flow. Most VR headsets have really good headphones, and that really helps. What else did I'm just running through my head of the list of things I wanted to talk about. I think that's the main points. There's some other smaller bits I want to talk about in the game, because we're just talking about Beat Saber today. The PSVR, the second version of the SKU, has headsets on it. The first version of the PSVR SKU does not have headphones on it. It does have both versions have the headphone adapter on the cable, so you can plug headphones into there. I've plugged in over-ear headphones. This is one thing I would actually say, is if you can get some open back headphones, it really helps with VR, because it means the moment you pause the game or the moment the music stops, you can fully hear the room noise around you. You don't want noise cancelling headphones, because then you can immediately sort of tell if there's any noise around you, which is useful. It makes you feel a lot more comfortable in VR. We've seen a lot of people make that statement. Any other questions before we go into the next song? I've turned the game way down, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me speak generally about bits and bobs. Normally, as I say, for my VR setup, I have a different setup for chat, but for Beat Saber it doesn't really work, so for now we're just going to have to break and read chat in between. Anything else? Okay. Good. The good news is the recording of this, I actually use Multitrack audio recording, so I will do a quick track edit before uploading the recording to YouTube. And so hopefully the YouTube version of this won't have as bad an audio mix. YouTube people in the future can tell you if my assumption was correct. Okay, now another big thing with VR games, especially if you take the headset on and off, or if it's a physical game, don't be afraid to take a second to adjust the headset to get that nice sweet spot of focus, and close one eye and then open the other, close one eye and then open the other, and that'll help you find that sweet spot. Right. Of course, the other thing I haven't spoken yet about is the hugest advantage that Beat Saber has. Its game design respects the tracking. So looking at me now, you can see the VR headset's outside-in tracking. If I ever put my hands in front of my face, my headset tracking will actually degrade slightly because I'm covering some of the tracking markers. And sometimes, based on what tracking model the PSVR has decided to use, because you'll notice I've got a purple and a red light and blue light. Sometimes based on room conditions, the PSVR will color these slightly differently. Make sure there's no backlighting behind you and avoid any UV light like sunlight coming into the room. All of you dreamers know what kills the PS Move tracking. The same stuff kills PSVR tracking. But you have no control over the hardware. What you do have control over is the game design. And the game design, Crab Rave, hard, cool. The game design part is, you'll notice that the entire time I'm playing Beat Saber, my hands are either to the side or below my head. There's no game actions that require me to bring my hands in front of my head, and there's no game actions that require me to obscure one hand with the other. And that's really important, because I've seen a lot of games where they add like a bow design in, or they add a game mechanic that basically, for most players, will break tracking in certain circumstances. So you need to be aware when you're designing your interactions in VR that you acknowledge how the tracking works on the platform, and you don't design a game which makes people do activities which compromise the tracking solution. Now obviously it's slightly different on different headsets, but you all know the limitations of PSVR, and they're quite easy to explain. Oh yeah, this song, Crab Rave in VR in 90 degrees, is much harder than normal Crab Rave. While I'm actually doing that, if you go adjust PlayStation VR, and this is a good way to test, confirm your position, you can see, like, if I put my hands too high, I lose tracking. That's quite common with most people's VR setups. You don't ever really want them to go much further above their head, unless it's a very quick, short gesture and you only care about the pump up. Likewise, you know, if you make people go to their full arm extent often, and it's not just like it's not just for a big pump out move. Like if I'm doing that in game design, it's fine, but if I'm fiddling out in the distance here, that's a problem. And yeah, as I say, anything that puts my hands in front of my face, or anything that puts one move controller in front of the other, that'll break stuff. And you can see why it'll break stuff. Likewise, anything that makes you go behind your body. And if you do anything where it's like throwing gesture, see there's a move drifting, and you're hiding the ball, that's when stuff breaks, right? So be careful of like over the shoulder stuff. But yeah, so it's one of the things that, wow, Crab Raven hard. Sorry, I'm having to downgrade all of my, I'm going to stick to the originals because they're not going to get normal. There we go. They're not going to get DMCA'd as I play. Well, I hope they aren't. Right. So anyway, what were we talking about? Tracking position of hands. Yeah, you can see how Beat Saber's tracking position for hands really helps, and it doesn't generally put the player in a position where they have to break tracking. Anything else? The breakthrough and the feedback. So they use a little bit of vibration feedback on the moves when you cut through. It matches the visual design because no one's expecting a lightsaber to have resistance when it cuts through the stuff, but it does have a nice little bit of rumble feedback. You do have to be quite careful with the rumble because rumble can actually degrade the accelerometer and gyroscopic performance in tracked controllers, because it's just one of those like little things of physics. If you rumble the controller, you'll get a slight degradation, which for fine motion can be problematic. As long as you're not overusing it, it shouldn't be too much of a problem, and especially if you're not doing it when someone's trying to do fine grain control. I mean, generally you always want to go light on vibration because it will kill people's batteries, because it obviously uses energy, and people don't want to be nipping in and out of VR to charge their controllers. So, you know, that's something to be considerate about. What else can we learn from Beat Saber? So the UI you can see is very subtle. You don't really need to reference it much. It's nice big text. In the 90-degree form, it follows me. You'll notice the menus in the menu system are nicely concave. That helps generally. You'll see that in a lot of VR games. The tilted circular menus. It's quite a common design practice. There is actually, so this 90-degree version is actually based off another version called 360 version, which was when the Quest launched with Beat Saber. It was the like unique selling point for Beat Saber on the Quest, is they had these 360 songs. Because they have inside-out tracking and no cables, they could say to people, oh, you know, turn in all 360 directions, which is a nice, it's a nice feature. But generally, you want to avoid turning people around in VR. It disorientates them a lot. Yeah, that's always a problem. Oh, I haven't even talked about my favorite feature. So you see these little these little specks of dust throughout the entire play space. They really help center comfort, as does the floor. The floor, because the floor is static here, it reinforces the fact that stuff's coming towards you, not that you're flying towards stuff. But these little motes of dust are way more important than people realize. Like, I almost wish you could do this in Dreams, where you do a version with these motes of dust and without these motes of dust, and you would immediately see a huge, huge difference. They're really, really important. Oh, you'll also notice that nothing is solid black, okay? Different VR headsets displays have slightly better advantages and disadvantages. The PSVR is a full RGB strip display, which means that you get a higher sub-pixel resolution than you would with an OLED pentile display, which is a thing I'd have to draw to explain. But this is a traditional VR strip display. The problem with an LCD RGB strip display rather than a pentile OLED display is the blacks can be a problem. You never want solid blacks. I could go into all of the VR explanation, the low-level technical explanations, but the general guidance is avoid solid black. You always want, like here there's a bit of a blue in the sky and a bit of clouds and a bit of motion and movement. You always want a little bit of something there. You never want it pure black. Because if you go to pure black, the sub area of the screen can actually turn off, and then turning on there's a whole thing, and yeah, it's an issue. Also, you'll notice for this game's aesthetic, it works quite well because it's all a bit glowy. But whenever you have high contrast in VR, you can get a bit of a halo effect. It's different on different headsets to different degrees, but most games play it fairly safe with the halo effect. Yeah, going through. Morning, Rag. Right. I know, Duck. It is a bit of a joke. Yeah, with the dark background, you can't go too dark. The vibrant particles and stuff, it feels good if the halo effect looks good to you, like looking at those fireworks there. The fact that they glow really bright and they have a bit of blurry halo around them actually works in the game's favor, with the problems I was talking about. Yeah, we are going to go through a different VR game every day this week and next week, and we're going to talk about what that VR game does right, what it does wrong. Beat Saber doesn't do much wrong. Beat Saber is really top-notch, and that's why I wanted to start with Beat Saber, because I know a lot of people's first instinct will be to make a music game of some description. Okay, right, let's go back in. Any other questions before I go back in? This is going to be probably the last song. And then we're going to take a series of questions and we're going to wrap it. Okay? Awesome. Right. Oh dear. Hold on. Okay. So before I go any further, I should probably just run through some of the options that Beat Saber has. First of all, the 3 modes it has. It's got Party, Solo, and Campaign. Campaign was added for the PSVR release, and it just gave you a campaign to play through that built it up, gave you some goals and some missions. I never actually finished it because I hit some songs I didn't like, and so I didn't actually finish the thing. I should actually get off my butt and try to finish those. I used to have a routine every morning. I'd play Beat Saber. I did that for like a year. Oh, auto restart and fail. They've added that. That's good. Oh, trail intensity. They've added that. Advanced HUD. What's the advanced HUD? I'm curious. No text and HUDs. Reduced debris. Automatic player height. Your player height's a whole thing. Static lights. Left-handed. Environments. Colors. Cool. So that's a campaign mode. Party mode is just so you can jump in and switch between your friends, and it all just works kind of fun. Right. Oh, what's settings? Floor adjust, audio latency. If you're plugging in directly into the headset, you shouldn't need to worry about audio latency. That's more of a PC problem. Because they're plugging your headphones directly into the... should do it. If you're using a capture card or anything like that, be aware of that. Okay, then in solo play, as I say, you have all your modifiers: instant fail, battery, disappearing arrows. I hate disappearing arrows. Ghost notes, no obstacles, no bombs, slower song. If you're practicing, a slower song's nice. fail mode's nice. Okay. Any not super well-known song requests for? I suppose we could do one of the Rocket League. But yeah, these will all get. Oh, Timberland. I haven't actually bought that one. Those will all get hit up. Let me just go look down. Okay, cool. We are going to probably jump into extras, original songs. Do you know what? Let's do drum and bass on expert. I feel warmed up. I say that and then I realize if I do it on expert, I'm not going to be able to talk. So let's just do it on hard and I'll talk. Right. Ooh, that was a bit of a miss there for me. Yeah, Beat Saber, solid example. It's one of the games I generally recommend everyone with VR get, not only because it's just a great game, it's a great workout. There is actually a website that tracks the different workouts from VR games and says what's a good game and what's a not good game for working out. Beat Saber's right up there with Creed in terms of games that will make you sweat. But I recommend it to people because generally everyone I've shown Beat Saber enjoys it, and if you've just bought a PSVR headset and you want to show it off to friends and family, Beat Saber is a game that people instantly get. It requires no gamer knowledge. It's fun to watch people flail around in Beat Saber. It's just a safe bet. It's a really, really safe bet, Beat Saber. And, you know, it's not too pricey. It's, yeah, very, very reasonable. Yeah, I think Beat Saber is basically the Guitar Hero of PSVR. I think Beat Saber and games like it will be with us through pretty much the lifespan of VR. When I say lifespan of VR, I mean pretty much forever. I think it's like how the mouse made first-person shooters just a staple, and then Halo started third-person console shooters. You know, it's just once someone's proven out the formula, it's really good. There's a more modern version, a different take on this formula called Pistol Whip, which is also worth a look. I'd love to talk through Pistol Whip. I haven't actually bought it for my PSVR yet. I should actually just grab it for PSVR because it wasn't on PSVR for a very long time. That's the other thing, that it's a tricky thing for Dreams, by the way, but not a lot of people realize this, but most VR platforms didn't have quality control, and so for a long time this caused a lot of headaches, and PSVR was the only platform that had quality control. Thankfully, Facebook and Oculus did implement quality control with the Quest. Not as much traditional, because obviously PlayStation and like Nintendo and all the other console players has a strong history of technical quality, you know, to make sure a game doesn't break when you buy it, kind of thing. Obviously it can't be perfect, and you know, platform holders can't make developers make bug-free games, but there is a certain base level quality, and especially with VR that was really important, because I think a lot of early PC VR was kind of just all over the shop. But it does mean that sometimes a PC VR game will take longer to come to PlayStation VR, but of course it's going to be an interesting challenge, because for Dreams, well, you can't quality test UGC. User-created content is going to be user-created content. So it'll be an interesting experience. It'll be a very interesting experience. This is part of the reason why I wanted to do this series on good and bad VR, because I think it's actually the thing that most excites me about PlayStation VR. Some of you are just going to make the worst freaking vomit roller coasters. Some of you are going to try things that you totally shouldn't try in VR. And it's going to be awesome. You're going to find stuff that we never thought about. But, you know, I figured before we go all nuts in VR, it wouldn't be a bad idea to talk about what has worked in the past. And just jumpstart your design knowledge a bit on the VR landscape, because I think it's not, it's very, very useful. It's a new medium. You're all game designers. You're all in VR. You're all going to be VR designers soon in Dreams, and I want you all to do a good job of it. So I figured sharing some of this discussion on VR games, it's good. It's good. As I say, we'll be going through one game a day until Dreams VR launches in a week and a day? Until a week and a day when Dreams VR launches, which I think we're all very excited for. But if you take nothing else away from the Beat Saber chat, if I can only give you one piece of advice from Beat Saber, make your players feel awesome. The bigger cutting blocks and the smaller bad hit blocks is probably, that and frame rate are probably the two things that people forget about Beat Saber. When I've seen a lot of bad clones of Beat Saber, mostly on PC VR, and nailing the game feel and giving the player that generous hitbox and keeping the frame rate up. It's really, really critical. So Rag, that's obviously, I think, one of the reasons why Beat Saber is most successful on PC is people sideloading new tracks. It could never happen on console, because on console, there's just too many reasons why it could never happen. Because sideloading tracks is technically illegal, depending on how you do it. There's ways, like, if you allowed people to import an audio track into the game from their own library, and then you made them build their own beat map, that technically, potentially could be illegal, depending how you do it. But sharing songs and sharing that stuff gets into real nightmare territory. PC VR gets around it by being the Wild West. They are doing beat tracks and stuff like that, and it's a thing. But yeah, the thing, we're not really here to talk about Beat Saber's economy. We're here just to talk about some of their design lessons and what they did right and what they didn't do right. And in this case, there's not much I can critique them on, really. They're from a VR point of view, they're a very, very solid game. Your music selection always matters, but you're going to have, depending on the kind of rhythm game you are, Beat Saber was always going to do best with EDM. EDM was always going to be like the go-to music for Beat Saber, just because of the actions and behavior of it. If you had like classical music, whatever, you'd almost want a different design mechanic. Tips on making VR class. We are going to cover we are going to cover an on-rails shooter. On-rails shooters are a really valid genre, and we are going to cover on-rails shooters. There's quite a few tunes in Beat Saber. There is quite a few tunes. I'm not going to say what game we're going to cover each day until we cover it on the day, partly because I don't want to lock myself in, and partly because I want to double check some things on each game before I do it. That being said, thank you everyone for dropping by. One thing I can tell you, these VR streams are not going to run long. VR is a little bit more demanding as a game session. Though we are going to talk about the games you can play in VR for hours and hours and hours. And the big difference there is standing and sitting. Standing and sitting makes a bigger difference than people realize. That being all said, thank you all for joining me so much. And I will see you tomorrow. Take care all.